Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the channel. It's me, Rob Marsiglio. I'm a sales representative with Keller Williams Referred Urban, living out here in Durham region, serving the great people of this area, doing my best to bring you weekly content, keep you up to date on all things going on with Greater Toronto Area real estate. In this week's video, as you could tell from the title and the thumbnail, we are trying to determine really the most overvalued suburb in the GTA. I'm also going to get into some pricing updates as to what is going on in each region from the weekly basis. We'll look at median sale prices and sale counts at the end of the video. First, to answer the question, what is the most overvalued suburb? Looking at this chart, and just to give you some context, we're going to be talking detached homes as reported by the Toronto Real Estate Board. So this is going back all the way to January 1996, when the kind of average price for a detached home in Durham region was just shy of $200,000. You're talking just shy of $300,000 for kind of York, Peel, and Toronto and Halton, all in that range there. And, based on what we're seeing here, clearly everywhere is overvalued. Now we're up to just shy of $950,000 for an average detached home in Durham region. And you're getting up into the close to, $1.5 million mark, 1.4 plus everywhere else. Now, because it's the Greater Toronto Area, the way that I want to determine value is relative to Toronto home prices. So how has the average detached home price in the suburbs changed relative to what we're seeing in Toronto? That could kind of give us our definition of value change. And let's use Durham region as our first example. So this big blue squiggly line is a monthly update as to what the average sale price of a detached home was in Durham compared to Toronto for that month. So you can see that back at the peak of things, a detached home in Durham region was worth people were paying roughly 70% of what they would have paid for a detached home in Toronto. It bottomed out kind of back in 2014 here, and you can see that in that month specifically, right around January 2014, the amount you paid for a detached home in Durham region was around 44% relative to what you would pay for a detached home in Toronto. Now, this dotted line tracks how that average moved over the years, and these thicker solid lines are all in the legend at the bottom. So you have your average going back to 1996, you have your 5-year average, you have your 10-year average, and you have your 15-year average. What we're trying to determine is kind of how has the 1-year average changed compared to the 5-year, the 10-year, the 15-year, and the total. So you can see that in Durham region, houses now compared to how they were valued over the past 5 years are up almost 7%. The most drastic change would be the 15-year, where we're up. The value relative to Toronto is up about 18% in Durham region. On to York region, and this one is interesting because York is really the only suburb that saw this hump in 2016, early 2017. That mania, that early mania really did happen in York region, more so than you saw in Halton, Peel, and Durham regions. You'll notice on the other graphs that it's either a bit more of a swale here because Toronto prices got away from the other suburbs, but York region had this bit of a bump, and it's really inflated the averages for the 15 and 10-year marks. The 5-year still up 8% almost. That's the biggest, spoiler alert, change in value. So the value relative to Toronto has changed the most in the past 5 years in York region. Everywhere else kind of packed in pretty steadily, like I said, because of this hump right here. In Peel region, this graph looks a lot more like the Durham region graph. Durham region's values relative to Toronto started falling off even a little more in the early 2010s. But you can see that detached home values relative to Toronto home values, about 82% over the past year. And that's up from anywhere, it was about 72.8% the average over the last 10 years, 73.25% the average over the last 15 years. But again, the value relative to Toronto has gone up this much over these timeframes in Peel region. And lastly, to Halton, almost again, carbon copy of what we saw in Peel, where values really only picked up kind of an extreme amount, I'd say, over the last couple of years. It was a big run up, just like we saw everywhere from early 2020 to early 2022, followed by this bit of a fall off, but the values are up, about 5%, this 1-year average compared to our 5-year average, the 10, 15, and the total average are all kind of in that 9 to 10% range. That's a lot of lines and a lot of numbers that I just threw at you to kind of show how values have changed relative to Toronto going back to 1996. So I've summarized it all nicely, I hope, in this next chart. And here you go, we rank based on the percentage change. So you can see it's the change from the 12-month rolling average. So over the past year, how does that compare to the 5-year average, the 10-year average, the 15-year average, and the total average going back to 1996? As you can see, kind of if you're looking at it on 5-year perspective, York would be the most overvalued based on the last average over the last 5 years. But if we're looking kind of more big picture going back to 1996 and how things changed relative over this entire time, Durham region still, even though the values of homes are the least here, be most overvalued in terms of how much they've changed compared to the city of Toronto. Based on all that, what do you think is the most overvalued suburb? Try and give me a constructive, nice answer down here. I know everywhere, like I said off the top, is overvalued for what it is, especially when you compare looking down to our neighbors south of the border and home values there, even home values in other provinces or other parts of this province. But like I said, what do you think is the most overvalued based on the data I have provided for you today? That's all fun with the hypotheticals, but I also want to just hop in very quickly to wrap this video up. Like I promised, what's happening with weekly sale counts and median sale prices across all of these markets. I love the 4 to a page efficiency that we had last week, so we're going to do that again. Toronto freehold properties, you can see, like we said prior to the month starting, let's not be necessarily too surprised if there's a bit of a price bump. The median sale price jumps in September in kind of a normal year. We're seeing that on the freehold side of things. We also did see sales activity kind of pick up to highs that we haven't really seen since going back to, end of June here, middle of July even. But sales activity did definitely ramp up on the Toronto freehold side. When we move over to condos, the 4-week moving average isn't moving too much. I wouldn't say we've seen big price jumps in condo properties. That market is pretty saturated with inventory right now. If you follow me on Twitter, I update my months of inventory charts regularly over there. So again, sales numbers have stayed pretty flat, kind of suppressed that we had seen kind of heading into the fall. We haven't really seen this big bounce back in activity in the condos like we've seen on the freehold side. Down to Durham region, again, we saw prices fall off from week 35 to week 36, so that's heading into the fall. They jumped a little bit, but I'd say this is kind of similar to what we saw in the Toronto condo side of things. Nothing to really indicate we've got some massive price or activity recovery. Even our sale counts relatively suppressed based on what we've seen even through the summer out in Durham region. In York region, we saw a big jump in the median sale price last week. That's kind of given some of that back. Again, this is all just week to week. I think it's more important to follow what is this moving average line doing and then tracking what is happening with sales activity. Again, no massive jump on the sales side of things in York region either. And we'll wrap up quickly with Peel and Halton region. So Peel, we saw that big jump in median sale price from week 35 to week 36. So heading into the fall market, another jump, and it's actually definitely started to move that 4-week moving average. This would be kind of, in like the top 10 for weeks this year in terms of median sale price reported so far. A tiny bit of recovery, but nothing like we saw really in Toronto with that jump. Still well below kind of the highs that we saw back in May, June of this year. And Halton region, a little bit of price recovery. This hasn't been as quite as big of a drop, I'd say, through the year as we saw in Peel region over in Halton. Sales activity still relatively suppressed. Our 4-week moving average for prices heading up just a little bit, but don't throw rocks at me for using the seasonal word here, but I wouldn't call this anything more than just seasonality that we're seeing. That's all I've got time for this week. I hope that the kind of overvaluation relative to Toronto exercise was helpful. Still maybe a bit of an opportunity to sell it close to the highest relative values we've seen in Durham region and in certain areas like that. Like values now relative to Toronto values are still as high as they have been in spite of this price correction we are undergoing. So never want to put anybody's feet to the fire, but if you're thinking of selling, can't say that, the future is going to be any better than the situation that we are in right now, at least not for the near future. Thanks so much for sticking with me right to the end. Till we speak again next week. Please stay safe, and cheers. Hey there, I really appreciate you watching this video all the way to the end. If you enjoyed it, I've got another video for you right here on the screen. And, while you're here, maybe just click on my face, subscribe to. I don't want you to miss anything going forward.